it's just a pleasure to look around and see a lot of faces I know, and some that I don't. I know most everybody here, or might not be able to call your name, but that's my problem. You know your name, so that's okay. That's happening to me as well sometimes. I came to Rockford. I've been thinking I was the first pastor of Rockford after it was, but I wasn't. It was Don Waterhouse. And when I came, Mr. George Meeker was the pastor over there. But I guess I have a first when it was finally broken off of one of the Chicagoland churches and its own church. So then I started. So there were several that went before me, but it was a glorious thing. My wife and I rolled into Rockford from the south, stayed at Howard Johnson's. So that's kind of the place of starting, maybe, I don't know. At any rate, that was in December 31st, 74. So January 1st, 75 was the first day here. And I left in June 1982. My wife, Linda, who is with us here today, of course, with me for 39 and a half years, whatever it is. It's almost 40 here, was a member of this church. And I met her and knew her for those years. And she was this lady with 4 kids in the church. And I knew her personally. And little did I know in that last year that I would get to know her very well. And so I was transferred to Kansas City and then came back and took her back there too. So that was 40 years ago. My. At any rate, that's how I started here. And I came to, just a minute, I came to a church which was unusual, but I didn't know it at that time. You know, God sets churches as well as sets people. And as far as ministers teaching the congregation teaches the minister very possibly way more than he was able to teach. This was the first pastorate for me, and I just learned so much, met so many people. It was one of the most active churches I'd ever seen or heard of. So many activities, which I, with youthful energy, absolutely loved. But this church was to be a great work of God. So we do have these letters that I have printed out, and I would like to read those quickly. Not too quickly, they're important. First is for Randy Stiver. And he says, wow, 50 years God's church in the greater Rockford area. From the summer of 1985 to the summer of 1991, it was our pleasure to pastor the Rockford, Madison, later became Rockford, Janesville circuit. He says, those were wonderful years. Our daughter Amanda began her school years in the Milton, Wisconsin school district. We had many great holiday meetings in the Milton High School auditorium with special music provided by the combined choir and orchestra. What great days those were. We also enjoyed many terrific and inspiring holy days in the large assembly hall on the Rock County Fairgrounds in Janesville. A number of deacons, deaconesses, and elders were ordained in that building. Our memories of those holy days include lots of inspiration and laughter for the sheer joy of knowing and living God's way of life. We also had women's club meetings, sportsman's club, and later graduate club meetings, usually in Janesville or Milton. All the clubs made many wonderful memories, but one that takes the cake was when Keith Stillman gave his Add Color speech in the sportsman's club. Many of you know Keith, and he's a man of few but thoughtful words, then even as now. The Add Color speech was a big challenge for Keith as a man of few words. So undaunted, he carried a quart canning jar full of clear water to the lectern, and then explained that it was hard for him to think of colorful things, so he was going to use the jar of water as a prop. Then he poured in a couple of drops of red food coloring, then some blue, some yellow and green, and he humorously described how the colors were swirling around. We laughed so hard our sides ached, and it was the best Add Color speech of the year and possibly in many years. That was only one of the marvelous club meeting highlights of our years in the church circuit, but far from the only richly memorable events. For several years, the two churches hosted the huge chicken barbecue at the feast in Wisconsin Dells. The first time our combined crews served 3,000 sit-down meals in just over 20 minutes. What a team. That's a lot. God's blessing over 50 years as a wonderful, faithful congregation in God's church with love in Christ, Randy, Linda, and Amanda Stiver. Okay, this is from Steve Nutzman, his wife, Melania. To the Beloit, Wisconsin United Church of God congregation on your 50th anniversary. Melania and I deeply appreciate the love and dedication of you as God's elect. During our 9-year stay in the Boise Rockford area, the congregation there, parentheses, you, congregation there, you, is filled with faithful servants. It was a joy to come to Sabbath services each Sabbath and annual holy days to be with all of you. We miss seeing you and hope this finds you well during the 50th during your 50th years as a congregation. I think we got an extra S in there or something. Congratulations. During our time with you, we were blessed with one special educational event every other year. We had one weekend ABC sampler by Mr. Gary Antian, 3 World News and Prophecy Sabbaths by Darius McNeely, Robin Weber, and also Melvin Rhodes. On one Sabbath, Dr. Rick Sherrod was with us from Texas for a sermon and several presentations on Israel and prophecy. We felt all these special times together added to our knowledge about God and helped us to bond as a spiritual family. And let's not forget about Good News Television. Over 100 half-hour programs were produced by a dedicated and talented team of servants in the Beloit congregation. We also sponsored over 24 stations around the U.S. that carried the gospel on cable access TV. Some of you may remember the annual clothes giveaway in Rockford. Many of you donated clothes and helped staff the Sunday giveaway to the public. I was thinking of a picnic that sounded like that. Thank you for your dedication in helping to get clothing to those in need. Also, I want to thank all of you who edited and contributed to the Beloit News for so many years. It was a finely produced newsletter that helped everyone get to know one another, and the articles offered good spiritual food to its readers. I feel it was one of the finest locally produced newsletters around, and me too, because I was a subscriber. The Beloit congregation also hosted the annual United Youth Camp's winter camp on the shores of Lake Geneva. This camp began in 1995 and has run continuously since then, except for 1 year because of COVID. Many staff came from the Beloit congregation. Our prayers and love to each of you, and may God bless you. You are a very special congregation of God's elect, and happy 50th anniversary. Steve and Melania Nutzman. They're in Boise, Idaho. He mentions here. Now we have 2 letters from people who are in attendance. So this is from Mrs. Artis Roenspees, and she says, Dave and I considered it an honor to be asked to pastor the Beloit and Dells congregation when the need arose in 2011, and we're always so grateful to serve here. God has used the trials that we have all been through, both together and individually, to draw us closer and become a more loving and forgiving family. I'm glad this is the congregation God has put me into. Happy 50th anniversary, everyone. So, thank you. You can thank her because she's here. And then we have one from Andy Duran and his wife, Amber. When we first joined the congregation in Beloit, it was knowing that we would only be there for a short time, but that never stops the congregation from treating us like family from day one. There were no other small children there, but our 2 young boys looked forward to each Sabbath because everyone went out of their way to include them, talk to them, and make the Beloit congregation feel like home, which is exactly what the Beloit congregation is to us, a second home. We are so thankful for our time there. We will always remember playing charades with the congregation, our outdoor picnic on the river, or the individual hospitality of so many. The boys will never forget when they set up a whole table so they could race their Hot Wheels down the ramp. Ezra still remembers the conversations he had about his favorite things because someone older took time to get to know a little 4-year-old boy who loved mac and cheese. We didn't need years for the love of God to be manifested in that congregation. That is a true testament to the members' faithfulness and the steadfastness toward the truth. We send our love for New England. It will always be like home to us. And then the last one here we have from Mrs. Mary D'Alessandro, also with us right here. Randy and I transferred to Illinois on June 2016. Randy began pastoring the Beloit, Wisconsin, and Hinsdale, Illinois congregations that same month. Both of us looked at this move as an exciting opportunity. We knew quite a few of the members in the Beloit congregation and from past feasts in the Dells. What a great opportunity to get to know those members better and meet new brethren we hadn't previously been acquainted with. During our time in Beloit, we enjoyed our Sabbaths with the brethren. We had some wonderful potlucks after services. The members worked together setting up and putting everything away after our meals. We enjoyed the midday in-home Bible studies at the Nimitz home. Rumpus kept us entertained with his snoring at Randy's feet while Randy gave the Bible study. An extra assistant there. Everyone enjoyed the meals Don and Nimitz coordinated after the Bible study. The Morrisons hosted an evening midweek Bible study. Riley was there to greet us as we entered their house. What a treat to be able to get together with the brethren during the week. When the ladies found out Randy really liked watermelon, there was watermelon very often after services. Although our time was cut short by Randy's sudden passing, we both really enjoyed our time with our dear friends, the Beloit brethren. I am honored to be a part of the 50th anniversary celebration. Mary D'Alessandro. Okay, just nervously looking at the clock. Try to talk fast. I told you about when we got here. The first thing that happened is event that happened is we moved into a house quickly, a rental house. It was 47 degrees below zero that night. That would be wind chill, like 30 degrees or something with high wind. And it blew the storm window off. We were just crashed during the night and part of our house went crashing down the street. So I just moved from Southern California, having lived there. So that was impressive. And but it got better. At any rate, I mentioned this, got ahead of myself, mentioned this a while ago. This church, and my wife Linda was part of this church, says the same thing. It was warm and welcoming and was always busy, but we treated people nicely. They liked coming here. And so that was in Rockford. Did I say Rockford? I say Rockford because that's where I was, but it's Rockford-Beloit and now Beloit. But it was just a wonderful group of people. We had 210 when I arrived. That was the size of the church. They sent me, because I was first pastorate, to a smaller church of 210. So times change and things change. But there's certainly trials and problems in that 7.5 years. But there were so many, there's so many good blessings. It's a real education. As a matter of fact, that would be one chapter out of the education of one Mitch Knapp, because you learn so much from the people that you're serving. So it was positive, always positive. I don't mean somebody get grumpy once in a while, but this is a positive, cheerful church, friendly, very active, good. Just so many good people. It was happy and it was fun. It was nurturing. And it accomplished a lot. This church accomplished a lot, which we've already heard 2 or 3 comments about. Now, I have a whole page of activities. I'd like to read everyone in detail, but I can't. Really, I was thinking what we learned and what we did, and it's too much to read. So I wrote short notes. I can't even read those. But I did put them into kind of categories. People were unified and happy because they were focused on. I came to a church that was really focused on the kingdom of God and on doing God's work. So when we said, well, we got these opportunity to pass out, plain truths at the county fairs, we had loads of volunteers, and we put them out all over the counties in both states, and by the thousands and thousands. We had the I Love America thing, which was a choir presentation that I truly loved and enjoyed. We even did it one year for the 4th of July committee, and that was 78. I always thought it was 76 bicentennial, but that's when it had its genesis. And we did it, and we're all over the papers, and Mrs. Morrison, I'm sure, has the scrapbook here, and you can probably have already seen some of those things. But that was a huge amount of effort, and people did that very happily. So those things were directly in the work. The feast, this church served other churches around, and especially the feast. We did I think we started the idea of having a chicken dinner for the Los Viejos, the older ones. And so we did that, and it was a small section of the building up there. And then we had, we brought in KFC, I guess it was. Everybody had a ball. And I had learned that other churches, other feast sites had done that too. So it began a church tradition which remains today and here continues. The interest was to help other people. Every year there was and I think there still is, widows' evening where the church took all the widows in the congregation out for dinner. And it was smaller then, and it's grown larger, and it's just a joyous thing. It's one other example of serving. There were a lot of YOU activities, too many to mention, sports, trip to Big Sandy, the monthly YOU activity, which was a Bible study at the Knapp residence, which wasn't too far from the house. I mean, the house wasn't too far from the church. Was a big hit because the parents came, and then more came, and so it was a big social at our house with this monstrous living room, and that worked pretty well. We had dances and costume parties and lots of music, Spokesman's Club, close friends and fellow laborers. It was just great. We even had a style show. I have a memory of an AICF-sponsored style show. Anybody remember that? Okay, Corrine does. Thank you. Roger, good, very good. So it was very busy. Okay. That's the end of the activities, too many to mention. Some concluding comments here. This is a church which has given rich blessings to many people, not just people in this church. We blessed Chicago with a lot of support. We blessed Milwaukee and other smaller churches. We're just in there, a lot of with music, but also other things. And this tradition continued on and continues today of just serving and doing good things, to be honored. And one thing, Mr. Morrison mentioned this, these things were not just our work, they're God's work. And this day deserves to be remembered because this is a work of God. It isn't a bunch of people that got together like, the singing clubs. I love those singing clubs. This is a work of God that he started. Each church was also set, planted, and those other words, we were talking about them, they're 7 words or 8. And God started it, and he continued it, and he's still working. We've had trials over the years, certainly, but that was all in the cards. We're supposed to in this life. It's the church, like every individual, should have trials and come out on the other side. Trials are something that God gives us to get you to from point A to point B. You change. Might not even have anything to do with the trial, but you change. That's what God's working on. This church has done that too. So this is worth remembering. I'm so happy to be here with my wife to celebrate this anniversary. This congregation is very much in our hearts as well. It is an absolute joy, and my message is that may God continue, and I'm sure he will, to bless this congregation as he has and in even greater ways going on.